Support.
We have a motion.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes. Aye.
Aye. Those
No problem, thank you, good morning. May I bring these up front? Part of our report is our Jackson Challenge booklet that we have for you this morning, and inside the booklet we have our Blackman LBFA site readiness checklist for you, so you all can see where we're at with that process. Good morning. I wanted to apologize that I'm presenting to you this morning. Tim Rogers had a death in the family, so he really wanted to be here this morning to answer your questions and address you all. The information that I just handed out was our Jackson Challenge 2025 Capital Campaign booklet, along with the most current site readiness checklist for the Jackson Technology Park North. It's current through January 23rd. A couple things that have been going on at the Enterprise Group. We've held 2 investor breakfasts based on our new plan that's being presented now. As you may be aware, the EG, we're in our last year of our Imagine Jackson 2020 capital campaign. So in the first 4 years of our plan, we surpassed our 5-year goal of creating and retaining 1,500 jobs. We actually are at 1,707 jobs retained and created. And we have a current investment for commitment from our local companies of over $152 million. So we've been really successful in helping our community grow and expand. While the Imagine Jackson 2020 plan has made great progress, it's imperative that the EG look at the challenges for the next 5 years and beyond. And that booklet that I presented to you provides you with a comprehensive framework for our community for an approach to address those challenges on the horizon. It also We'll provide you with an overview of what has been accomplished since 2016, when we started our Imagine Jackson 2020 campaign. It also presents data on the challenges that we face and a plan of action for the EG for the next 5 years, beginning January 1 of 2021. Continued investment is key to continue our efforts to work with partners like you all here at the county to continue to grow our economy and provide quality employment opportunities for everyone in our community. I won't bore you with a lot of details, so are there any questions, comments on the booklet that I presented to you this morning? Okay, if there are, Tim will be back in the office next week, and he would welcome your emails, calls, things like that, so please feel free and reach out if you need to. The second item that I gave you was the checklist. It's current through January 23rd, as I mentioned. We have been very busy working with our partners at Blackman Township and at JDOT with Mr. Bolt and his amazing team that has helped the Enterprise Group keep this project moving forward, because there are lots of different pieces and parts. And now that we don't have Amy kind of overseeing all that and kind of mothering that process, Tim and I are really working very hard to make sure that project keeps moving forward. We do have a meeting this Friday. We're going to start talking about the potential EDA grant that we might be able to use for the industrial park that could be used to help fund a road into the park and could also be used for county farm road improvements. So we're going to start that process this Friday. We're meeting with JDOT and Blackman Township and our PTAC office so we can begin SAM registrations, DUNS, preparation. Everyone's going to get their homework assignments basically for this grant application. Are there any questions or concerns related to the checklist that I provided to you this morning? Okay, just a couple things. You're all invited to Amy Guerrero's open house for her retirement. She retires April 1. We're having an open house on Wednesday, March the 25th. It'll be on the 11th floor at 1 Jackson Square, just across the hall from our offices at the Enterprise Group. And then our 2020 EG Spring Board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, April 23rd, 7:30 a.m., Spring Arbor University in the Ralph Carey Forum. And a special thanks to County Administrator Mr. Overton for being on our EG Executive Committee also. Thank you. And I'll see you next month when we have recommendations for JCBRA and EDC board appointments. Thank you.
Welcome, Rick. Threw you a curveball, sorry.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. In front of you, you have a request from the front of the court for new carpet tiles throughout most of the building. The existing carpet in there, I think it's salmon colored. It's hard to tell. It's been in place since late 70s, early 80s. And Director Anderson managed to find the funding to fund this project. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chair, this is a request from Consumers Energy for an easement from the former SIT-PAT building over to the transformer situated right behind the Wesley Street Jail. In your packet, there's a diagram showing the path of the electrical line, and this is something the administrator and I have both discussed, and it really makes sense to do it this way, boring under Washington, under our parking lot at Wesley, and hooking up directly into the transformer, as opposed to picking up a different part of the electric line and having a connection somewhere underground.
Sorry, I was just.
Support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Good morning. So a representative from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources presented to the Parks Board in November to talk about chronic wasting disease and a program that they're doing to slow the transmission of the disease. So chronic wasting disease, or CWD, it's a contagious neurological disease that affects deer, elk, and moose. It's similar to mad cow disease. It leads to death, and it's something that once deer have, they can't get rid of. And it's believed to have a long-term impact on Michigan's deer population. So the DNR reached out to the county to talk about the potential of removing and testing deer from Cascades Golf Course. And the reason is Cascades Golf Course sits within a 5-mile radius of where they've found infected deer with CWD. They're currently doing testing in Jackson County. They were doing extensive testing in 2019. And in 5 counties in Michigan, they did find positive tests for CWD. Jackson County was the 3rd most with 7 positive tests. The goal for Jackson County is 2,600 tests. So far, they've tested 1,700 deer. Again, the purpose of this would be to slow the transmission, and the request today would be to allow them to use Cascades Golf Course to remove and test deer.
No, there's no financial cost on the county's end, right? That's what it says.
Correct, yeah. It's funded by some grants from the DNR.
It's approved here. Questions on that? Tony?
So they want to take certain deer in the park, kill them, and test them for CWD. How does this testing slow the spread of CWSD or CWD?
Well, I think the idea is that they're removing them from an area where they've already found them infected, and they learn more about the disease. They remove, I know they have a goal of a certain amount for Jackson County because they're worried about this county more than most.
Okay, have they said how many they intend to remove or kill?
From the county of Jackson, their intentions is 2,600.
2,600?
Yes.
Okay, how are they going to determine which deer to how are they going to determine which deer to kill to stop the spread of this disease?
They don't.
Seems like I read in here we've already harvested 1,700, 900. The deer, once they're harvested and tested.
They donate the meat. It's donated to Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger.
Okay. Board? What's your pleasure? Okay. Any support?
Support.
We have motion support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Thank you, Kyle. Next up, you have 4G. This Parks USS Arizona relic request.
Okay, so the USS Arizona was a battleship built for the United States Navy. It was destroyed in the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. There was a loss of 1,177 officers and crewmen. The wreck still lies at the bottom of Pearl Harbor today, and the Navy's been authorized to donate pieces of the Arizona for display and memorial purposes. A local citizen, Mr. Stanley Mazer, learned about these opportunities last summer and inquired about displaying this relic alongside our two existing memorials in Cascades Park. If you're not familiar, we've got a piece of structural steel from the Twin Towers from 9/11. We also have a Victims of Violent Crimes memorial in the park there along Randolph Street there in Cascades Park. Mr. Mazer has communicated with the Navy about obtaining a relic for the park, and they're requesting an official request letter from the county. He does have commitments for donations to cover the costs for shipping, any costs related to the display case. It'd be displayed in a case similar to the 9/11 piece, which is steel and glass. This was approved at the park board meeting just last week.
Support.
We have a motion support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Sorry, there's some.
Go ahead, Tony.
As a citizen, I attended the parks meeting as well, Mr.
That would be potentially a future request, and then determine what the Parks Board would like to see happen at that point, is how I understand it. That would be the process. Right now, there's no commitments to do anything further.
Okay, we have a motion support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Thank you. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Next up, we have finance. Welcome, Cecilia.
Good morning. I am here to report on December's financial statements. At the time when this report was generated, it was showing, as you can see on the statistics, our expenditure percentage was higher than our revenues, and that the dollar impact was a negative amount to the fund balance of $394,000. Since this report's been ran, we've started working on year-end procedures and entries that affect our balance sheet. And we're very close to breaking even right now. We're about a negative up to the fund balance, about $33,000. I don't have everything yet. So I don't have treasury's reports. I don't have all of our receivables. So I'm hopeful, after everything is done, that we'll break even, or maybe hopefully have a positive to our fund balance. But I just don't have all the pieces yet, but it's looking promising. So I wanted to report that to you. And if there's any questions on the financial statement as it was prepared. Okay, I'll know more next month, so. All right, go ahead. To the budget amendments? Yes. Okay. So there was some budget amendments that we did need to do. We needed to transfer the budget that we had for 2020 from delinquent tax from our 245 to our 402 fund, which is more equipment replacement, because we had some commitments that we need to cover. The road patrol had an increase to their grant, so we wanted to record that. And you can kind of see off that he wanted to put some monies away for replacing cars, so that's what the capital outlay is. We also had a little bit of money for the airport, where he wanted to increase his insurance costs. And so yeah, is there any other questions regarding the budget amendments? This is the first one of many, I'm sure, that will come across.
This is be approved and sent to the full board.
Support.
Motion and support.
All right.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Cecilia.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Administrator Controller, a review of Policy 5180.
This policy deals with security and weapons at the courthouse. It has been vetted by the appropriate personnel at the courthouse. And then, of course, after that, it goes to our leadership team, department head elected officials. So this has been through the regular process, including the proper people at the courthouse to update it. So we would just request approval of the amendments.
Discussion board. We have a motion. Need a
Support.
support? We have motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Go ahead.
Do you need me to state that over? Okay. Item 2 is where I have my question. Any unauthorized person, that's somebody not assigned to that court or that building, who has in the person's immediate possession a valid permit to carry weapons, and you're attempting to enter the courthouse or front of the court building, a few other sentences, then we get down, shall be required to secure their weapon prior to access to entry. So required to secure their weapon. How do you secure it? What does that imply here?
That would be up to the court personnel and the security at the courthouse, but typically secure means that it's in a safe place, securing it safely. I don't know specifically what their policy is as far as if they have gun lockers at the courthouse available for rent. I don't believe they do. But it is a gun-free zone, so.
Can we consider putting gun lockers in there so when a honest citizen with a concealed carry permit comes, they can use one of those gun lockers and secure their weapon before they enter the courthouse or the front of the court?
That would be up to the chief judges of the courthouse if they're willing to do that.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no further discussion, I need a motion and support to send this on. Okay. Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye. 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 Those against? Say the same. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Move on to 4K, Administrator Controller Update of Policy 4040.
If I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd ask everyone to refer to Section 4.3. After weeks of discussion with the Vice Chair, myself, and other commissioners, it has been felt that instead of that Section 4.3 should read, all communications and petitions received at a meeting from the general public shall be distributed, period. Okay? No voting, no receiving, no nothing. All we will do is we will accept and distribute. Okay? That's how it was prior to this policy being written. We went back and looked at previous history. Normally, they were just passed out for everyone to get copies of. Then you could choose what you wanted to do with it yourself. Exactly like a person standing at the microphone and speaking and sharing their opinion with us. They would be able to pass out their documents to us, and you'd be all set. The clerk would get a copy. Everybody in the room would get a copy who's sitting on the front dais. The communication would be complete. Is everyone comfortable?
Mr. Chair, it does not say that in our,
That's correct. That's what I'm asking for right now. I'm having a discussion, Phil. There's no motion or anything.
okay. Yeah, it needs to be received and distributed, yes.
No, it doesn't need to be received, sir. It needs to be passed out. What we're recommending, after, like I said, discussion with the vice chair and other commissioners over this past month, it has been asked that if the commissioners would choose under 4.3, all communications and petitions received at a meeting from the general public shall be passed out.
Okay.
Okay, everyone will get a copy. They will be they'll distributed, passed out, whichever you'd prefer. You would walk up here like Miss Kelly did and walk and pass everything out, or hand it to the chair and I'll make sure it's distributed back and forth. There's no motions to receive, no nothing. The clerk would get a copy, every commissioner would get a copy. It would be no different than the person standing there and reading it verbatim.
Yeah, I would say, I was going to say that it's the same thing as if someone's
It's the
reading.
same thing, and that's the argument
You don't do
that's
anything.
been put forward by people who are concerned about receiving or not receiving. They know the person could stand up there and recite whatever they chose to recite. It's the exact same thing. We're opening it up a little bit for public communication to be a little bit more open. And then under commissioner comments, commissioners could share their opinions. Everyone would have a chance to speak then on a topic. This is just going to go to the full board this way. Is everyone comfortable with that?
So we are removing the received and put distributed on the 4.3.
We're not making a motion to receive, we're not doing any of that. All we're doing is getting the documents in our hands, which is what we want.
Yes.
And we want to be able to communicate our opinions on it, which can be done under commissioner comments.
Just one point for clarification, if I could ask a question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just my question would be, at that point, is that information then also received into our records as well, or would that require an additional motion?
No, you'd hand it to the clerk. That's what we used to do. It just was all handed and turned in. We added the motion to receive under a previous administration because we wanted to be a little bit more finite in our definitions. It's felt now that we can go back to a more open communicative pathway to the commissioners.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
has legal representation looked at this?
They have not looked at the word distributed or passed out. No, they have not.
Well-
But we would ask the administrator, if everyone agrees to this amendment, to do that between now and next Tuesday night.
Okay.
And it is my understanding, in a candid conversation with legal counsel, that that's fine. We're doing exactly what we need to do. We're understanding what the public wants to present to us. They are presenting it to us in an open and clear forum, and everyone understands the rules.
I know I'm not on this committee, but I think it would be just proper to make sure that we cover all of our legal bases on that, so. Thank you. Nothing further.
I am comfortable with that proposed change. I've got a couple other items. Section 4.5, members of the public desiring to address the board shall follow the established public comment rules. In brackets, also see It used to say section 5.8, which there is no section 5.8 in this policy 4040. It's been changed to, in policy 4050. Policy 4050 under board doesn't really cover these communications. The section that really needs to be referred to, I believe, is the administrative policy 5080, communications. Because we're talking about in section 5.4, communications with the board. And administrative policy 5080 is the other reference to communications with the board. Administrative policy 5080 says, communications addressed to the county commissioners shall be placed in commissioner boxes if sufficient copies are provided. Other communications will be provided electronically. So section 4.5 is about communications. So that's my suggestion, that it be changed to also see administrative policy 5080, communications.
You're talking about two different communications, sir, if I may.
Well, there is no
Section
communication.
4, if I may, sir, Section 4.5 is communications at the meeting. Administrative policy is communications outside the meeting, where a citizen chooses to give information in between meetings to commissioners, and this way it shall be properly distributed to each commissioner. That's what that covers.
Okay, but it's the reference to the other communications, 4050, is procedures. And it talks about rules of the Board of Commissioners. So 4050, that's referenced here in red, deals with what commissioners do. 4050 does not deal with the public making presentations to the board.
Correct. That's because the instructions to the public is preceded prior to this.
Well, then we should not be referring to policy 4050, because 4050 doesn't belong under our section 4.5.
Are you making a motion to delete?
Yes, I think we need to delete in policy 4050 because it's not there.
Well, then I'm going to have to ask the chair of this committee. I was going to ask him to accept what I had stated, but if he could state it in the form of a motion, I think you need to find a member of this committee to do what you're asking also, or you'll have to wait till Tuesday night to be able to do it as a member of the full body.
Okay, I'll request, will some official board member to the General Government Committee, would you please make a motion that in section 4.5 strikes the brackets in their entirety?
I'll make the motion as we vote on this policy 4040. Section 4.5 ends at comment rules. After that, we will stricken the parenthesized statement, also see section 5.8 in policy 4050 for additional opportunities to address the board. That shall be stricken. I have a support?
Just a quick discussion. I'm assuming all this will go in front of our attorneys?
If I may. Yeah, I'll talk to our attorney about it. And I have talked to our attorney about this. And we're good with all, as he laid it out to me. His only concern with receiving documents from folks making presentations or otherwise is that we should not be making decisions whether we will receive or not receive a document based on the content or the person in front of us. Has no bearing. Free speech is free speech. And this will resolve that issue. I am very confident that he will approve, but I will nonetheless change the language and send it to him for review before Tuesday.
Okay, Mr. Chair, would you re-speak what you propose under 4.3 is the general public shall? out or distribute?
Through the chairman of general government, section 4.3 shall read, all communications and petitions received at a meeting from the general public shall be received.
Okay.
That means received and distributed, or however our council would like it, but there's no motion. No motion to accept or anything like that, or to bless, or anything at all, interpreted wise.
If I may, I'd like to change the word received to accepted, something like that. Received, I got to think, maybe we need to think about that word, because it implies a vote in general, normal language. It kind of implies some vote, and that's that's perhaps how we got turned around anyways 10 years ago or whatever it was on that. But some other word potentially, if anybody's got any thoughts on that. We have time before Tuesday to fine tune some of that. I think I understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and we'll get the language worked out with the attorney.
Could it just simply, instead of saying received, just simply say distributed to the commissioners and clerk?
Okay, I would like to make a request to the administrator. Can we get a clean revision of this and move this to the full board for reconsideration? So everybody knows what they're voting on, people out here know what we're voting on. We made 3 or 4 changes. Not, if you look at it, you can follow along, but
Yeah, it'll go up in board docs. It'll be completed and go out with the board docs. It'll be all there online. Shouldn't be a problem. I think between myself, Christopher, and Deborah, we understand what you're trying to accomplish, and we will discuss with attorney and make it happen.
okay, need a motion support to send this to the full board for consideration.
Support.
And the language will be cleaned up, or what we have discussed will be cleaned up. We'll make the decision there. Okay, all in favor? I need
Aye.
a motion support. Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Thank you. Next up, we have Administrator Controller, Policy 3340.
If I may. I think the issue here really is, boils down to whether or not we check someone, if they have a driver's license, a valid driver's license, before, well, wait a minute, I don't know if it's before or after we hire them. I don't think that mattered as much as just the fact that we check it. That's been, I think, Commissioner Elwell's thoughts behind it. I would tell you that my position has not changed. I've had conversations with both our attorney and our HR director. They believe, as do I, that we should only be seeking whether someone has a valid driver's license if it is pertinent to their job. How someone gets to work is up to them if driving is not an issue, or I should say an element of their job. That's why we generally do not do that. I think the struggle from our attorney perspective legal perspective is, you have 2 applicants that are equally qualified from what you can tell, on paper at least, and you like them both when you meet with them and all that, and you believe, wow, they could both do the job. Driving is not a requirement of this position, but yet you run their license and you run that and you go, oh, one's got a lot of tickets, the other doesn't. Our attorney's like, you could end up using that information to make a hiring decision when it has no real bearing on the job itself that they're applying for, and therefore leave yourself open potentially to some type of legal action. I think that's unlikely, but yet at the same time I recognize it's a valid possibility, and our HR director feels the same. So it's, but at the same time, when I discussed with our attorney, I said, well, really, how big a deal is this? I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill here. Check and see if someone has a valid driver's license. What's the real harm? And he also conceded that, yeah, it's unlikely, but we could be sued, but it's unlikely. But then again, why do it if it's not really pertinent to the job? And so what I'm telling the board is, whatever you guys want to do is fine. We'll go with it either way. Obviously, we can make it work. I don't think it's something that puts us in such dire legal jeopardy that, it's something that, we need to, draw a line in the sand, so to speak. So what's the pleasure of the board is really what it comes down to, guys. To be honest with you, if they lost their license 3 weeks ago and we hired them 2 years ago, our background check would have no bearing on it. There's an expectation from employees that if they cannot legally drive, that they not drive. If they choose to drive, breaking the law, just because we ask them to go get a shovel, it's on them, frankly, because we're not going to run a background check every time we ask somebody to get a shovel. So you just don't know.
You're checking. I've got 93 employees,
You check.
and they don't always tell me.
Yeah, we
They
have.
don't always tell you.
We're pushing over 750 employees to do a once-a-year background check. Becomes a big deal on those kind of things.
DOT are required.
Yeah, exactly. And some
Do you
positions,
really want to send?
well, I understand what you're saying, Phil. The question becomes, where do you draw the line? Am I going to have every clerk in every office? Am I going to run background check once a year on everyone?
I'm not talking background check. Show before you head down to the hardware store.
Oh, you're changing the dimensions here. You're suggesting that our policy require us to ask to see someone's driver's license and make sure that it's valid before we ask them to go pick something up.
They haven't been hired. Come there and get me 2 shovels. We could get just as sued.
I think we would prevail on that, to be honest with you, because there is an expectation that someone they're breaking the law. We haven't broken any laws there in that. If someone's driving illegally, it's on them. If it's not part of their job, it's unusual that we would be sending somebody to go get something, to say the least. But again, we'll do whatever the board would like to do on this. I don't think it's so dire either way. Although I would highly recommend against having a policy where there's an expectation that we're going to ask to see someone's driver's license every time we send them somewhere, or that we do an annual check on every employee, 750 plus every year on driver's license. Now, those employees that are driving, police officers, JDOT people, they have required CDLs. There's other requirements that are necessary for their position, and it's required for their job. That's a different deal, and we have a procedure to deal with that.
Clarification. So essentially, there's been no change to this policy since we seen it last, correct? Okay, I would offer a motion to send it to the full board.
Support.
Here we have a motion.
Aye.
I oppose.
Support.
Have no support for you? Thank you, Board.
Aye.
Aye.
Regarding the USS Arizona exhibit, I appreciate, Stan Mazer, I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words regarding USS Arizona. As the gentleman, I can't believe his name, mentioned, there was more to this exhibit than the showcase exhibiting the USS Arizona. We do have in mind a pavilion, bleacher seats, audio, video, or 60 students could attend who visit the site, could get a good picture story of the two tragedies, both the Arizona and the Twin Towers. And I'm in hopes that we can get approval here, providing funding is available for the entire concept, rather than doing this piecemeal. That's all I have to say.